after a highly successful debut of What's Next, we collected all the comments and questions that came along and decided to go forth with the project, and with the focus to help young creators to approach the art world and how to reframe value and bring positive change in the post-pandemic art world. Next talk is going to be on the local and its relationship to the global with different guests. And today is going to be another live on curating. We decided to start with curating because it's such a fashionable term right now, and it comes up a lot in the flood of information through newspaper, art webinars, live. There's a lot of conversation around curating and how curating may or may not change in the post-pandemic world. And I think a young aspiring curator my age, we come across, everyone that I just works within the art comes across the terms curating, and we all want to be curator, and we are all taught that it's it's really easy to become a curator. We can all be curator, but there is a lot of ambiguity around the practical steps and the paths and the qualities that we need to build in order to become a successful curator. So today we want to have this conversation about curating and how to approach it in the future and right now during the pandemic, and how that might change or may not change. So I invited Sharon again. Thank you for joining. Sharon Hecker is a brilliant art historian and curator, and she focuses on Medardo Rosso, but has also worked with a few key Italian visual artists, such as Lucio Fontana and Fabbro. And she has curated major exhibitions in amazing institutions such as the Pulitzer Arts Foundation in the US or Galerie Thaddaeus Ropac in London. And if I'm not wrong, you have an exhibition coming out at the Guggenheim in Venice, who knows when. Postponed program. And so we're going to have this conversation on curating, and please feel free to ask questions. We're going to have a time for Q&A at the end. So if you can put your questions at the end, otherwise I'm going to go through the comments. A short introduction about myself. I'm Maria, and I graduated last year from a BA degree in Chinese and Asian art history. And I've worked mainly in the art market also, but I also had few experiences in public institutions, especially in Taiwan and in China. And I would like to become a curator. I'm an aspiring curator, as I say, and I'm going to try to figure out my next step here with Sharon, and hopefully it will spark some reflection for everyone. So we can start after my introduction. Maybe I'm going to start with a bit of before going into the practical training and maybe qualities you suggest to a young curator. Maybe I'll start from a personal question. So maybe if you could just pick one of your exhibitions that you curated and single out a few qualities that you think are relevant to discuss right now in terms of a discussion around curating.
Sure. It's hard to choose because every show you curate has something wonderful about it and special, but maybe if I had to give one example that could be helpful for younger curators, probably the exhibition that I curated at the Pulitzer Foundation together with Tamara S. Schenkenberg. There were so many exhibitions on Medardo Rosso, all of them, in fact, before me, that were just called Medardo Rosso. And we really wanted to do something more than just his life and his career and putting up beautiful artworks. And we had a long time to think about it. And one of the things we came up with was this focus on light. And because Rosso was very interested in light, and also because sculpture has so much to do with light. And it was also a special moment in history because it was when he started making art, it was the moment that the electric light bulb was invented. And so clearly it changed the way people looked at things, that very intense light. And light then allowed us to do much more. And it wasn't just a show about light, and it wasn't just a show about this artist. It also could use the beautiful
Mm-hmm.
There we go. The Tadawando space that is the Pulitzer Foundation, because it has natural light. And so the sculptures these beautiful wax and bronze and plaster sculptures could be in natural light, and it changed every hour of the day. So people would come back at different times of the day to see how the works looked in that natural light. There was also water outside, and it reflected back through the windows onto the sculptures. We left it up for a long time, 3 seasons, autumn, winter, and spring, so that the light could change again over the works. And we decided not to travel the show because it was so special to that building. And of course, we were also thinking about artificial light because he was interested in the cabaret theaters. And so some of the rooms downstairs were in artificial light, and that was another kind of light. And we also worked on his photography, which obviously has to do with how he uses light. And but even beyond that, we decided to do something that was a little bit of meta curating, we would say, which is that we created a room where the viewer could adjust the light themselves and on the sculpture. So every time you changed the light, you could see a different way how the light was reacting with the sculpture, and you realize how much we are dependent on the curator setting the light for us and setting the mood for us, and how we can learn almost to be part of the experience by being able to manipulate the light. There was a tablet that people could work on. So the qualities of this show that make, I think, a good curatorial example is because it was more than just a gimmick or a theme. People really learned something. The works were very spread out. You had a lot of time to be involved in each artwork. And also the Pulitzer has a policy of no labels. So you didn't depend on the text. You know, you could really look at the artwork before you went to look for information about the artwork. There was no wall at the beginning that said of his biography or anything like that. You were just put right in contact with the art object and its surface. So I think that might be a good example for young curators as a way to think about shows.
I mean, that's really rare if you think about it, how we're overwhelmed by text at the moment, and the idea of not having labels and kind of being just engaging with the like emotional experience of seeing an artwork without having text overwhelming you, or having the choice to have it, is definitely really interesting. And I love the engagement with the light, if you think about it, just being able to see how that changed the artwork itself. So building on this question, if you could, what do you think are the core values of curating? I mean, this is such a broad question, but I think it's relevant to think about it now where the outward and all these art practices are put into question as being not necessary. But what do you think makes a good, like a curatorial practice valuable and real, and what are the core values that you always go back to in your practice?
So obviously it's very elaborate to put on a very good, serious show. It's a long process. But it's not just about getting the great loans or putting the works on the wall because you like them or because you think they're cool, or just an aesthetic experience without much rhyme, reason, or soul. And curating to me is about storytelling. And I think most curators will agree with that you have to create a meaningful narrative, something that the viewer starts from point A and is kind of transformed, or at least their ideas about the artist are changed, or a theme, or a time period. Something has to happen for you in that exhibition. Another thing I loved about the Pulitzer was that you had to walk from the back to the front and have the same incredible experience as when you walk from the beginning to the end of the show. So there would be a story to it as well. And I think that it's very important to be aware not to have blind spots, because there are some exhibitions about politics, for example, or a very charged political period, maybe fascism, that then decide to ignore the political side of the story. And so you've lost the soul and the nuance and the pain and the difficulty in a certain exhibition if you are dealing with a sensitive topic and you're not dealing with the sensitivities around that topic and just the art objects. I also don't think it's necessary to overwhelm. I think a very small show can have great ideas, large ideas, in fact. And my show at the Ropac Gallery with Julia Peyton-Jones, it was in one room, and it's a great challenge to do something very small that's also very intense and essential.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely very relevant right now, which we need to cater to a much smaller audience and to much smaller, just have access to much smaller objects and much less objects. So But yeah, I mean, yeah, I think also going back to the word, the like root of the word from Latin of curare, which is taking care of, looking after, and I think that's really relevant at the moment. And it's not just looking after the objects, but to me, it's always looking after three different poles, which is the artist, if you're curating an artist, and then the second agent is the object, and the third agent is the community and the audience. So there's always seemed to me that curators are in the middle of this three ways tension, and have to put focus on all of the three of them and being aware of all the three of them to curate good shows. And obviously you can have shows in which you put more attention on the dialogue with the artist or in the dialogue with the place of the community. For example, I remember your exhibition at the Ropac Gallery was about Medardo Rosso encounters in London. So then it kind of sparks a dialogue with the place itself. So I think these are all really relevant agents, like the object, the artist, and the audience and community that you speak into. And also, I think again, and make it clear, we're gonna speak about it a bit better. But I think there is a sense of responsibility, and is a desire that, you know, conveying knowledge. It has a powerful influence on the audience and who's gonna look at the art exhibition. So again, there is a sense of responsibility within the curator itself and that job.
A little bit. We also tried very hard not to be afraid to contradict ourselves, not to be afraid to play devil's advocate to whatever our theme was, and to think about somebody who might not agree with our position and how we incorporate that into the show as well. And little things like if you have we wanted in the Ropac show to use these stools where Rosso as bases, not use white cube bases, and we wanted the works to show sort of an artist studio, an artist at work. But at the same time, then we got to the point we said, oh, we don't want it to be too much like a mise en scène or a period room. So we undid our theory and we put in one white cube to just show that we're not tied perfectly to that narrative. We are also flexible enough to sort of go around and say, yes, we are in our time, looking back at another time, at an artist from another time. So I think that's really important too, is if you're co-curating, it's very good to have somebody who can constantly say, okay, but why are you doing this? What are you doing this for? And maybe we could look at it another way as well. So there's multiple points.
I mean, dialogue, yeah, I guess that's really important too.
That's why I love to co-curate, because you can come with very different points of view and try to find a happy medium.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, I mean, this tied up a bit on my next question, which is, I think for a young curator like me, what's really difficult is that we are pulled between different models of successful curatorship. So on one side, you have the more, let's say, traditional art historian curator, which usually has a high academic qualification and works in major museum or institution. But then on the other, you have maybe more impresarial curator, pass me the terms, as more independent curators that have tighter relationship with the market and travel between biennals and art fairs. And then you have artist curators, which curate their own work or curate works of other artists that they know, or like open galleries or artist spaces. Then you have Instagram influencer curators with like a lot of contacts and followers, and obviously a highly influential actions. So I could think actually of a name for all these prototypes. But I think in light of this diversification, which I want to underline that I'm not castigating, because I do think there's value in diversification, there's the value of having more equal opportunities and having more choices. But what would you suggest for a young curator to look up to at this moment in time?
So, I guess every historic moment produces its kind of curator, and the 80s, produced the impresario curator, because there was a late post-capitalism. There was much more of the idea of the independent curator who can be more fluidly involved with the market. But what's good is that today it's just much more inclusive. The definition is much wider. You can be any of those things, and if you're lucky enough to be independent, which has its good and bad sides, because the independent curators have to probably work harder to get their shows accepted in institutions, which already have big curatorial teams. I think certain things are going to remain the same, though. If you work in a museum, you're going to be continuing to have that benefit of proposing your shows inside the museum, although there will be other curators who have their shows that they're wanting to propose. So either, what your decision is as a young person entering this world kind of depends on what kind of world you would like to go into. Obviously, you have a bigger safety net inside museums. You have education teams. You have people who are part of the way that works for outreach, for IT. You are covered somehow and sustained by other curators. There's a hierarchy. You can start as an assistant curator, move up to associate curator, and then become a full curator. But you have mentors. You have people whose departments you work. If you start out as an independent, obviously you have a lot more freedom, but you don't have that wonderful opportunity to learn from people. I mean, at the Peggy Guggenheim, when I was very young, I watched Fred Licht, who was the curator of the Guggenheim, and that's how I decided what I wanted to do, because talking to him, I realized this is a wonderful way to bring art to people. And that was before I went back and decided I needed to do some more studying. And often curators are not specialized. They don't have specialized knowledge, so it doesn't mean you have to be specialized in one artist and then do only shows of one artist. I mean, how many Medardo Rosso shows can we have? And there's people who are just in a period, they're specialized, and then they do the shows that have to do with the museum's mission.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, actually, because I think we have this myth of like you're gonna study that and that's what you're gonna curate all your life. But I guess you are in this case, you're a bit of a special case in which you are curating yourself for this Medardo Rosso exhibition, but it's not the case for like most of curators, isn't it? If I think about curators at the moment, they have to just conform to a program, a museum program.
Right. That's right. And, what you can get funding for and what the budget is of the museum, which, going to change probably now. Thank God I'm not going to only do Rosso shows. I'm very excited about this Fontana show, although it rests on the ideas and the thinking that I've put into the Rosso shows as a base. But because I'm very interested in material history, I'm very interested in all kinds of things that maybe another curator might not have that same interest.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. And I think also, I mean, again, I feel like it has changed a lot, or you can correct me on that because I have not that long history, but I think that the term curating has changed a lot and it has widened a lot. More than change, has widened a lot to include different kind of curatorship in comparison to the past. So that we have these more Instagram-based or impresarial art market-related curators, but the core of curating is still the same, and curators in big institutional museums are still doing more or less the same kind of job, isn't it?
More or less. I would say, times change, and maybe, the post-COVID period is going to make an enormous difference on how things are curated inside museums.
What do you think about that? What do you think about what was going to look like curator post-COVID? How is it going to change or not change?
So I just think structures and approaches are going to have to change because there's going to be less money in these institutions. We know for a fact that some museums are not going to reopen after this, are going to be in incredible budget crises. That means there might be smaller shows. We know that fewer people at a time can go into a museum now. So that's going to change the approach. I think the blockbusters of the 80s, 90s, 2000s are probably not going to happen very much in the near future. There's going to be much less travel. Maybe not a bad thing because, there'll be less carbon footprint for bringing artworks. You can't have the work from Brazil that you think is really important because it's going to be expensive to bring over and insure and travel a courier and also, thinking about the environment. So maybe we are going to be working with less, and less might be even a good thing. There will be a certain austerity, and less might actually be more and allow us to go deeper into each artwork. There'll probably be more reliance on permanent collections. People will be trying to use the collections that they have to put together interesting exhibitions. But again, maybe that's not a bad thing because we don't see all of museums' collections, and this is a great opportunity. I think also there might be more blended shows with more use of technology, as we've been seeing through the COVID crisis. Probably more consciousness of local things, lesser known artists. Again, not a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can see all this change. And I think what you're saying also reminds me to just say loud that often we think of curating as like just putting some paintings on the wall and stuff, but there's so much more to it before, and so many practical steps and arrangement of shipment of artwork, research, conservation, going to look for the specific artwork you want to tell your stories. And that is also going to be affected so strongly about for example, is being affected so strongly about the with the isolation and lockdown. And
also, some things can't travel. Some things are too fragile, or they shouldn't travel. If you're in a museum situation, there will be limitations on that. Some museums don't want you to get close to the work, so you will have to build a kind of a base that will allow that. Or some museums don't want to use a certain amount of lighting. I know with the Medardo Rosso waxes, this was an issue because we had works that we loved and we wanted to show them in certain light, and museums said no, for our policy that can't happen. Some people want their sculptures to be covered. Other people say it's okay to take off the cover. So for us, the plexiglass and the light that reflects on the plexiglass is a terrible thing, but we had to make do with what we could. So you have to sort of always think of curating as what's possible, not just what you dream up idealistically in your head. When you actually go out and try to do things, they might not work. They might not look good when you put it up on the wall right there or in that space. They just, you have to make some changes. The base looks bad. At the last minute, so much happens in the last minute. The labels, sometimes the light reflects on the labels and you can't see them because the color that you used on your label was wrong for the light. So, there's endless things that you have to be aware of all the time as you're going through the planning stages.
For sure. And I think also just going back to the question is what has changed and will change even more. I think about accessibility, for example, I think curators nowadays have to reflect and be aware much more of accessibility to kind of rewrite and re-narrate history that was mainly thinking about how the artwork was colonialized. So how now curators are much more aware of being accessible to ethnic minorities, to different genders, to different sexuality, to different audiences. And I think the idea of building this, just making art more accessible beyond the doors of the museum, of the galleries, is becoming more and more appealing to many curators. And we've seen it, for example, as you said, with technology during the pandemic, how we have looked at live here. Even though it's not strictly the role of curators to do all this live Instagram programs, but it's more the institution having their own department. But I think technology will play a big role in curating in the future, even if it's never going to completely take over the live experience.
Yeah, I think that what we learned from the post-COVID period is that there's just this kind of overload of information online right now, and it's a bit too much. You have to be a bit selective. And the other is that technology can't really 100% replace the live experience in front of a painting or a sculpture, there is a factor that you cannot reproduce by going online. So that will always remain the case, I think.
Yeah. And also I have another question related to, because we touched a bit upon curators that work in the art market and curators that work in public institution, but because I know there are curators that exclusively work in art institution and the public spheres, and art curators that work within the art market, and there are independent curators that navigate between the two, as you, for example. What are the difference in curating in the art market and curating in public institution? I think that's a question that a young person
it's a big difference. First of all, time. Galleries have a much quicker time schedule, so you have much less time to prepare. And this is a problem if you're going to do a museum quality show in a commercial gallery. Museums will not loan without a long lead up time for the loans. On the other hand, you have a lot more flexibility in the gallery situation that you don't have because institutions have very strict rules. I think that some curators and museums they're beholden to the museum rules so that they cannot leave and curate in the commercial sector. In my case, I had to make it very clear that being an expert on the artist, if I was going into a commercial gallery, I could not have any works for sale at that show because it would have been a conflict of interest. And of course, for a commercial gallery, it's a big step to accept that. And they were wonderful about that because they understood that if any work that I put in the show could not be a work that was going on sale while I was there. So that's the difference too.
How does that work? Was it just something is a kind of like normal practice, or is it?
No, some commercial galleries will have a piece or two for sale, even in a museum quality show, and we've seen some overlap. There's been beautiful commercial gallery shows that are museum quality with very high level curators and great designers for the exhibition. So it's a kind of a give and take. I would say vice versa. A museum's mission and its goal is different. And so it remains a repository for works that are masterpieces and things that have been donated or collected over time. And that's going to give you a different flavor when you're curating an exhibition.
So it's very much a personal choice. Was your personal choice not to get involved in the commercial side?
Yes, because for an artist that I work on so intensely, I think it would not have been a good idea because I think that we can dialogue very well when we know the differences between each other and where one of these worlds ends and the other begins. Then you can create some dialogue. But to kind of put them all together as one would defeat the purpose of the two separate worlds.
Yeah, although I also hope in my utopian visions that COVID I can see that has brought many institutions between themselves, and many are like auction houses and art galleries to collaborate and show solidarity between each other. So I do hope that will bridge a bit the words between the art market and the public institution. I understand that they have two different scope and they have two different targets, but I think there's so much this practice of looking down upon the other, and I hope there's going to be more bridging and more support within the two worlds. Maybe through curating exhibition as you curate work for commercial galleries. But I hope that dialogue would be more significant in the future, and thinking that the core of the two worlds is still art and is still engaging the audience through art. So.
Yeah, that will be a great thing for your generation to think about, how to bridge without creating problems. That's an interesting question to think about in the future.
And I think curator is definitely a mediator to it, and it can be the key for this dialogue. But also was wondering how, I guess it's quite different to curate. What's the response for a curator to curate a dead artist versus curating a living artist? Because that's trigger different question. Because when I think of curating a living artist, it's very much about a dialogue with an artist. How do you go around curating a late artist?
So a living artist, at least what I saw working for artists, you have to be very respectful because they are creating as they are making the show, and even in the last minute they could change something, and that's the excitement of the living artist, is that they are thinking through the exhibition as much as they are actually bringing it to the public as they are doing it. And that's something that unfortunately dies when the artist dies, because you don't have them there, picking up that little piece of string and making something out of it because they saw it and they thought it was really interesting and ties the whole show together. The risk on the other side is to speak too much from the voice of the artist when he or she is no longer alive, and to try to sort of get into their head too much. So you have to have a kind of a respect that's different when it's a late artist, to think, okay, I am imposing some kind of point of view on this, and I'd like to keep as close as I can to the artist's vision, but I don't pretend to hold the key to the artist's creativity in my show. And that you really have to shift from one to the other if you're working with a live artist or a non-living artist.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Some of them like to have you give them an idea, like I'm working with a young artist right now, and she wants me to create the idea into which she will put her art. She doesn't like the idea of deciding herself. I've seen other artists who absolutely don't like that. They don't want the curator to give an idea. They want to come up with the idea and then have the curator help them bring it alive in the show.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I guess to me, if I imagine it, it's very much a kind of dialogue. When I have, I haven't curated yet any of my artist friends, but when I have dialogue about their works, it's very much about dialogue. And I think it's constructive for both sides to listen to the other part. We're running a bit out of time, but I'm going to ask you the last question, which I think is a very practical question, but I think young people in general, and specifically at this time of stagnation, need practical advice. So what would you suggest as a training to become a curator? Like one point I get really stuck in is whether I need to go towards a more academic postgraduate and even a PhD, or I need more practical experience, independent project, and go maybe and do all this. There's so many practical MAs about curating and exhibiting at the moment, and I always kind of struggle between understanding what's the right way, if there is a right way.
One thing that's common to anybody, whether you decide to go to study or you decide to just start doing it, is what my colleague, who I very much admire, Simonetta Fraguelli, always says. She's a very well-known curator. Look at as much art as you can, because that is the basis for whatever you're going to do, is to just develop an eye for art and see as many exhibitions as you can, and try to just absorb as much as you can a sensitivity towards art and the objects that you're curating. There really isn't a single path. I think it depends what feels right to you at the moment. Some people want to study the conceptual theory of curating, and they want to know the history of curating, and they want to try to curate. Other people just want to get their hands dirty right now and try to start working. I think that when you are hesitating, like you are, Maria, you're not ready yet to decide. But when you do know, you know. When you know that you're ready to go study, or you know that you're ready to do something, you will not have that many doubts about it. I remember that moment after I'd worked for a long time at the Guggenheim and said, do I want to go back to school? Do I not want to go back to school? And then one day it just hit me. Yes, I want to go back to school. And I think it will help me to get further in depth of where I want to go to know more about art from the academic side. I will say in the last thought that there's a beautiful advantage in American universities, and also in, not all, but many, and also in numerous UK universities, where you have university museums, and you're able to take art history and do a degree, but also work in the museum, or take courses on museum studies inside the museum, or even have a class that's based on artworks in the museum. For example, Harvard does that. I was very lucky because Yale had the Yale University Art Gallery. I got totally excited about Baroque art because my professor was curating an exhibition of Baroque art at that time in the gallery. So we had many of our classes there. Wonderful artworks were brought in, and she taught us about how she made choices about those artworks. The same thing at Berkeley. We had the little Berkeley Art Museum, and the director of the museum held courses on what it means to curate an exhibition. So somehow it's a nice halfway solution for somebody who would like a little bit of both, is to find a university that also has a museum in it that's kind of a teaching museum. And gives you a chance to sort of see if that's something that you might be interested in.
Yeah, for sure. Because I always struggle to do I want to go back to academia? To me now it's very much a rejection to academia, and wanted to do more practical side thing. I think what you're saying about museums is something I've had the luck of having access to a museum. So when I was, my professors were in curating and directing the collectors of SOA. So that was really, that is something that is really valuable, going between the academic side of it and curating itself. I also think it depends, again, tied up to the other question of what kind of curator we want to be, because there's different side of curating, and there's diversification, which also give us a bigger chance, a bigger opportunity to choose what path to take. But I think, again, the advice that I take for myself that you gave me is when you know, because that's going to hit at some point. And I just wasn't ready to go back to it.
That's right.
Yeah, so we have talked more than what we were supposed to. We're going to, I haven't seen any particular question. And if anyone
has one, maybe they can write it right now. We have maybe a few more minutes to answer any questions.
Let me see. We have spoke quite a bit, but I can't really see any questions. I see comments. And maybe we can just, if there's no question, we can just post a video and people can ask question. I'm just gonna end reminding that we're gonna go on with our project. Okay. And postpone from questions because last time we didn't have enough time for questions. And our next project is gonna be on the local and way in which the local, which is a topic that's come out a lot during the pandemic, can apply to the global and to the outward at the moment. Oh, we have a question.
We have a question, okay.
Any hard skill that you think will be good to develop during this time?
Oh, God. What do you think, Maria? I think that one thing that's maybe, I don't know if it's a hard skill, but you do have to be a good people person. You have to be able to deal with a lot of different kinds of people, and especially if you're an independent and you're going into a museum that's not yours, you have to sort of be very respectful of that museum and that institution. So one of the skills I would say to develop is a lot of patience and try to sort of understand where the museum is coming from. Research skills, very important. If you can, that's why I do think that going to some form of graduate school, even a master's, allows you to do a deeper level of research than you would have done in a BA, and it allows you to go more deeply into a subject. So a hard skill that can help you also avoid problematic artworks, works that shouldn't be on the exhibition if it's a non-living artist, and also thinking about the themes of the show. A little more education and understanding history can help you very much to avoid pitfalls and criticism.
Yeah, and I think, again, on the research skill, I think curating is such an exploited term nowadays and it's very fashionable. But I think what goes back to it always is being able to research around the topic, even if it's not your specialized topic, but being able to work with material, work with artists, work with what's there and applying into knowledge because it's a responsibility as well. But in terms of skill, I think it really depends also on what kind of curatorship you want to go to. What I think, and I don't know, maybe you can tell me if it's a good skill I've invested time with. For me, learning a language is really important because I know what I want to curate is to do with contemporary Chinese art, and I want to be able to engage with artists, engage with materials that I wouldn't be able to. So I think a language, if that's what you want to be more geographical, or like technology skills also are going to be very important. I don't know if for curators themselves, but to work around in the outward.
Yeah, agreed. And what we were saying when we talked on the phone also, that it's really if you know a language and a culture and a history, you will curate more sensitively than to that culture than you would if you don't have any access or any understanding of that culture. Of course, it will exist. There are many shows that do that and don't have the depth, but the really great shows are the ones that have some kind of deep relationship with the culture, like you do with China, for example, and Chinese artists, and understanding them. That already is a great skill to have when you go into the world of curating.
Yeah, still need to refine it. I'm not that at all, but I think now is really good time to think about skills. But I think it's skills because we have time to think about skills, but also we need to think skills that are authentic to us and skills that we think are going to be helpful for the future. And also, I think again, it's about: do you want to curate in museums or an institution? Do you want to curate in what kind of setting? Research skills is something that is critical, whatever kind of curatorship you go in.
Whatever you do in life, yes, absolutely.
I'm just gonna end. I was gonna say about the local, and our next work is gonna be a webinar, and it's gonna have a few guests speaking about engaging with the local within different side of the outward. So if there's not any further questions, I'm gonna end it here. And thank thank you so much for everyone who joined. Thank you, Sharon, for being here. Thank you for the questions, and see you next time.
Okay, bye.